Welcome, listener, to the Beard and the Bowtie, where your curiosity meets conversation and every topic is an adventure. I'm Jay, the Bowtie, your guide through the rich and complex world of wine. This is a special episode. I'm going to do a nice Weller bourbon, delicious, tasty whiskey bourbon. I do enjoy my bourbons, my scotches, my whiskeys, as do you, right? Today, you decided to pick a port, which is perfect because we're talking about wine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
I was about to say.
Today, we're talking wine. That's right. Today, we're diving into the fascinating history of wine and sharing some of our fondest memories of this beloved beverage. Join us as we explore how wine has evolved over the centuries and why it continues to be a symbol of joy and connection. Sit back, pour a drink, and let's toast to history. You've paired with the Beard and the Bowtie.
The Beard and the Bowtie.
Nope. The Bowtie and the Beard. Nah.
The Beard
and the Bowtie. Today, I was like, this is a special episode. I'm going to do a nice Weller bourbon, delicious, tasty whiskey bourbon, right? Made here in the grand old US of A. Fantastic, lovely bourbon. I do enjoy my bourbons, my scotches, my whiskeys, as do you, right? Today, you decided to pick a port, which is perfect because we're talking about wine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say.
Today, we're talking wine.
You threw me. I'm all like, it's gonna like, we can talk about Blantons or like, what is,
Yeah,
okay.
see? Yeah.
So wine.
Yeah.
So I have a lot I can learn because this is another thing. In the culinary realm, we talked about this. Or you and I have talked about this a lot, and I tell this story a lot. The idea that I knew you when, right? Like I knew you when you didn't know how to make a dish that
Listen, I'm going to stop you right there. When back in the day, I made a very mean, spicy green bean. Do you remember that thing?
Mean
that
to a colon, maybe.
Oh, it was horrible. But anyway, go ahead. Please continue.
The idea, though, you chose to quadruple down on the culinary arts, and obviously that has paid off for your skill set in cooking. But same thing with alcohol. At one point in time, it was something that I took very seriously. I cataloged everything. I researched everything. But what it almost became is I almost became lazy, thanks to you, in a good way. If I enjoyed something with you, that I was going to be able to get all the benefit of having done the research without having to do the research because you've done it and you were able to impart that knowledge. I mean, so it's always something I've enjoyed, like coming over to your house and either a whiskey or a bourbon or a good wine. And at some point, I was surprised because you know me, that I like to have a lot of knowledge and I like to be someone that knows and can articulate a lot of things. And I was absolutely okay. With this and cheese, to be honest with you, that was another one. I remember you and I used to go and spend more money than we probably should on cheeses and wines. And then I just stopped. I don't even know why I stopped.
Well, we did spend more money than we needed to because we didn't have the money at the time to spend on those types of wines and cheeses. But it was worth it for the experiences. Like you said, you like to do a lot of research on many things, and you've done research on this, something you've enjoyed. And so we're just going to discuss wine today. I wanted to chat a little bit about the history of it, just give some knowledge to some folks out there about wine itself.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I immediately just pictured someone my mind went crazy, my mind. So as soon as you said the history of it, I comically was all like some caveman, like someone dropped grapes, someone walked by, stepped on them, went to bed. Well, the next morning, their feet were like all wet. Would they be wet? They'd be, I don't know. They had grape juice on them. And someone was all like, time, but what is that? Oh, that's delicious.
But the difference is, and we'll get into this later with the process of winemaking, the difference with that is that would just be grape juice because it didn't have time to ferment or do anything. So it can't be.
I didn't say how long the person was laying down, I guess. Okay. Yeah, it was a while. I don't think they took showers daily.
They just found them later on and was like, oh, what is this random thing on their foot? I'm just going to lick that off for no reason. That's a different episode.
Let's go.
Different. And that's it for this episode, folks.
You found it was definitely B&B.
It's funny that you do talk about that and you go that far back. I don't believe, at least there's no evidence so far, that cave people had wine or did any wine making, but they do see it going back to about 6000 BC, way back in
before cars.
I don't know if it was before cars, but
6,
definitely 6000 BC.
years before cars.
Is that what BC means? Never knew that.
Never knew that.
Well,
We're learning things today.
yeah, we are. But yeah, so that was the first known evidence of it was back in 6000 BC. One of the things I find very interesting is they find old bottles on ships underwater and stuff. I don't think I would ever try one of those. I'm sure that'd be a nasty corked bottle. The oldest known bottle that's ever been found was in Armenia in 4100 BC. In case you wanted to know that.
I wonder, I think pressure, right?
Mhm.
At some point in time, a bottle goes down deep enough, it's just going to collapse on itself, I would imagine. And I'm wondering how much pressure is actually in there and what it could withstand, how deep it could actually go.
I believe, I'd have to look this up. I did not research this, but I believe they found bottles on the Titanic.
That's low.
Intact bottles. You know what? Give me a second. I'm going to research that. Thanks for helping me research my own episode.
No, because I just think about it, like, what is that limit? What's the limit for something that, because obviously wines were very prevalent when we were traversing the Atlantic and others.
Yeah.
And I would have imagined that they would have been considered, I don't know, but I'm just imagining that they would have been considered more of a luxury item than a everyday item. So like, them going down, some depth that it could cover, but I'm just curious on what could be withstood.
According to this research that I did just now.
According to my recent internet search.
It says that there were 1,500 bottles of wine that were on the Titanic, and oceanographers found that many of them were still mostly intact and drinkable after 100 years underwater. They didn't crush. I'm sure a bunch of them shattered as the ship was going down and they were being jostled around, but it says that they didn't implode for some reason. And then another continuing part of that search is champagne bottles. They're up to 290 psi, and as long as the cork stays in place, they're not going to implode because you have the pressure pushing out as well as the ocean pressure pushing in, so it's not going to go anywhere. But I don't know if that has to do with the shape of it, just being the cylinder itself.
Yeah, I think that would.
I'm not really sure, because you would think maybe the cork would, on a regular bottle, the cork would pop in once you get to a certain depth. I don't know, or maybe because there's fluid in it. No,
I'll tell you what. This is definitely going to be in the.
Oh yeah, this is in the retro. We're going to do some research on
retro. Yeah, because this is fascinating me. There's some of the things I'm finding.
But did you see that one of the rare Titanic wines got $1.4 million at auction?
And I can't imagine it was because of the wine as much as it is the story.
Oh yeah. Would you drink that wine?
I guess if I did enough research to see if it was safe for me, maybe
I would drink it.
So I'm seeing here. I just said safe. In 2019, an article comes out. It was for sale, 300-year-old shipwreck wine rescued from the bottom of the sea. And then the secondary line is, it may still be safe to drink. I love the may.
I know.
Good luck.
You could give it a try. It's up to you.
We feel like, this is fascinating. I will definitely do some for the retro. There's going to be some. This is already one topic I'm interested in.
Yeah, we'll put that on the bonus episode. That'll be fun.
Okay, but I can't imagine pressurized ocean wine is the first segment. And
that's it. That was the entire episode. Actually,
that's the episode. Okay, that's the episode.
No, that's not it.
I was about to say that's some poor planning.
Yeah. Hey, wow, that didn't go nearly as long as I anticipated. I thought you'd have more on pressurized wine bottles and deep sea diving. Well,
you were not impressed with my. Okay, that makes sense. Now,
yeah. Well, all right. Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things that just talking about, you think about it and you go, oh, wow, wine's old. The Titanic, 300-year-old bottle found on a ship, 100-year-old bottle, underwater. And then you look back and you go, like, the earliest known evidence is 6000 BC, which is insane, way back then, that they were, making it. And a lot of times, they were making wine and beer because it was safer than water. And so that's what they were drinking to stay healthy. So it was a health food.
That's interesting. Is it drink. Because of just the alcohol was
the alcohol and
things?
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That way you didn't die. You were like, oh, I guess I'll drink some wine or some meat. And that's why they had rations when they came across the ocean. They'd ration off beer and wine and stuff, try to keep you alive that way. I guess you sail better drunk. I don't know. Maybe you do podcast better drunk too. We'll see. But
the curvy lines become straight when you're drunk.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's where the flat earth
I've
stuff
got to go
came
back
from.
to old wine. Did I just hear you say the words flat earth? I'm turning this podcast off.
Do you not believe?
Oh boy. But anyway, so old wine, what is like the ultimate prank? So my mind went to like, how could you just be just super mean, right? And that's you make a time capsule and you get the world's most expensive wine right now and or process the most expensive wine. And just before you place it into this time capsule, which won't open for like hundreds upon hundreds of years, you take a needle and you stab it all the way through the cork.
I will stop you there.
Allow the drink to come or the wine to come through and oxygen to get in.
There's ways you can replace the cork cork and all that stuff. Same with the foil and
But like
everything.
at this point, it's in the time capsule. Hundreds of years go by. They open it. They're like, oh my goodness, this bottle is hundreds of years old. This is amazing. And then they pull it out and they're like, oh, this had no chance the entire time.
It's empty or it's corked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you could do that. I was thinking you were going to go down a different way.
You could do that. That would be a weird prank, but okay.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say you go the other route and taking a really expensive bottle and you replace it with some really not so good wine and you put it in there
put some apple juice in there.
Yeah. But there was a big, I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was a big controversy a while back where there was a gentleman who was taking wine to auctions. He'd buy expensive bottles and take them to auctions and he'd sell them for all kinds of, ridiculous prices. Turns out he was just getting the bottles.
And then switching the wine. Yeah. And that's my mind actually went there as well. Because
he was getting old bottles and he was filling it with less than good aged wine and putting it in there and selling it for.
And someone like me, like I'm not the person that's going to be like, oh, you give me a really expensive bottle and I'm going to be like, oh, this is delicious. But I'd say it's good. Like, oh yeah, I would drink this. And I at this point in time, I don't think I wouldn't understand the difference between a really good wine and a very overly priced expensive wine. I know how to enjoy it, but I don't know that I would be able to discern it. So what do you do there? Like if you spent $1 million on a bottle of wine, would you hire a specialist? Like just if you bought a piece of art, you would hire someone to look and see if it was counterfeit or not.
So first of all, if I had $1 million to blow on a bottle of wine, which hopefully next week I will. No, I won't.
Next week.
I wish one day, maybe. But if I did have $1 million,
if you stop getting tires, you might get there too soon.
That's not a lie, but that's not. Yeah, it's not a lie. I don't know how much I spent on tires. But anyway, back to if I did have $1 million to spend on a bottle of wine, I would hope to see. But the problem is all of these bottles were authenticated by experts.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Prior to going to auction.
The bottles are probably accurate, but it's the liquid inside. How do you?
But that's the thing. It's not just as we
would have to be the cork as well, right? You'd have to age the cork.
And we've gone to these conferences where you can go through tamper evidence stuff and all that. But and somehow he was getting the same foils. He was able to age the labels correctly, do all these things so that not only did the bottle, the outside of the bottle resemble and look correct, it didn't look as if there was any kind of tampering. Things looked aged. The foils were correct. It wasn't like, oh, this guy just went and put a brand new foil on top to cover it. The cork was correct, all that stuff. So everything was there.
So the assumption then becomes
so they were authenticated.
The wine and so is this a victimless crime, right? Like everybody believes that it's true. Like what's the benefit of drinking a wine that old as opposed to you go spend, let's say you spend a decent amount of money, you spend a couple $100s on a bottle of wine and people are like, oh, that's awesome. But then you bring $1 million bottle of wine and you open it and anybody that could look at it would be like, yeah, the cork is great. This is great. Yeah. I mean, do you get the same benefit as long as the wine isn't like, oh, I got to spit this out. This is gross.
Yeah. As long as it's not absolutely terrible. $1 million bottle of wine is just going to be because I can. That's all that's going to do, Or in the words of the Beard, why do you have $1 million bottle of wine? I can justify anything. It's one of those. Would that be significantly better? No. Some might argue yes. Again, I'm not a certified somm. I'm not going to go around saying that I am, because I'm no way at that level. I just enjoy wine to enjoy it. I like it with a good meal.
And that's what I was getting at. Like, if you end up enjoying the wine, if everyone has the experience of we're opening a maybe not a super old wine, but a well counterfeited bottle with cheap wine inside, the experience is there no matter what, even if it comes out.
That's true. I mean, unless you somehow find out that this wine was made 3 years ago and put into this bottle.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, how would you is there such a thing?
They can tell by after the bottle's open, they can tell by the grape musts on the bottom, and they can do analysis on the grape or on the wine itself. So there's ways that they can analyze it to see, is it approximately how old this is.
Here's the question. When you open that bottle, do you go, I don't want, like if that was a service, hey, we sold you this $6 million bottle of wine. I'm just making numbers up at this point. But then they go, hey, as that service, we have someone that will.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like at this point, we're like,
for me, I don't want to know because I want to have that experience of I was able to afford this bottle. I was able to share this with whoever's with me, and we're going to be able to talk about this, whether it's real or not. At that point, now some people might say, well, then I'll just sell you a $5 bottle and just say it's like, well, no, that's just shitty. You know, if it's legitimately, I've gone to the auction, done all that stuff and everything, I don't want to know. I don't think I do. I mean, maybe
and so
at the time it would change.
Is it a victimless crime? Because at that point you're selling an experience, not necessarily old liquid.
Well, again, now this is where I'll go back to. I'm not a som, and I'm definitely not a major connoisseur who does this as an art or as a life-consuming passion for it. At that point, you know, maybe if I had an obsession over wine, that'd be different. For me, no, I'm not too worried about it. I want the experience more so than I'm drinking this $1 million bottle that now I know what it's supposed to taste like, and it doesn't have this flavor, and why is this off? And there's no way this grape is from this region, or this varietal. I'm not gonna get that deep into $1 million bottle of wine to be able to know that. I can tell you for the most part, I can differentiate a lot of reds from each other, most of the whites from each other. I don't drink whites a whole lot, but most of the reds I can differentiate. Ports, you give me a ruby, I know it's a ruby port. I couldn't tell you if it was a Graham's. I couldn't tell you, you know, what it was, or Taylor's. I couldn't tell you the difference in those. I could definitely tell you that it's a ruby versus a tawny. That's about it. I'm not gonna be able to get deep into where it's from, but I enjoy the flavor. I enjoy the experience, spending time with people on it. And just, I mean, I don't know. That's me. So yeah, I wouldn't want to know. Don't tell me. You know, especially, and I'll tell you what, if it comes with the service, go ahead and take that 50 grand off or whatever it costs. Let me put that back in my pocket because I don't care.
There you go. We're young, super young, like in our early 20s.
Yeah, easily. At the time of this recording, yeah.
Yes, early teens. If you had to pick something that you just were taught and or got to learn from some of the best in the world, would wine and knowing understanding wine and being able to be, so you said, you know, I wouldn't know if I drank this port if it was X. Is that a skill you think you would like to learn in this next phase of your life? Is that something you think you would enjoy?
I probably would, but I think the problem is if I go down that road, similar to you, when I find a passion, I go all in. Like I can do some things where I can enjoy. Like right now, wine, whiskey, those are things that I'm fairly knowledgeable about. I enjoy. I can discern a few different things. But if I'm like, you know, I want to become a som, and this is it sounds funny, but this is the reason why I never became a som. I had the opportunity years ago when we were living in Colorado. Is if I went to become a level 1, I'm going to go all the way to the end, and that can be very life consuming, and not everybody becomes a master som, but I would do everything I could to become a master som. I could miss it, you know, 4 or 5 times. Hopefully I get invited to become a master som because invite only, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to spend everything I can to be able to get that knowledge. And so it's going to be very expensive, very time consuming, and obsessive. And I don't know if that's where I'd want to go with it. Because so this now goes back to, you know, we were talking in the beginning, you said, I knew you way back when you were able to cook boiled noodles, and that was it. Mac and cheese out of a box.
Oh, you messed that up. Let's just be fair.
No, mac and cheese out of a box was good. I'd add some tuna to it, some hot sauce. That was about all I could do.
I do remember that.
But anyway, we were talking about that, and I, like you said, I just decided, hey, I want to get really good at cooking. So I did, but I did that on my own, and I learned the stuff and just kind of experimented and
had conversations. I mean,
had conversations.
That was one thing that was big, is that you were willing to just talk with people, go out and find people that were good and have those conversations.
Go to restaurants, sit and talk to people. I remember going to in Idaho, a friend of mine he owned a restaurant, and so I would go and I would just go and cook in his restaurant.
Was it a friend of yours that owned a restaurant, or did you become friends with the owner of a restaurant?
I became friends with a gentleman, then found out he had a restaurant.
Okay, because typically it's actually the opposite. I remember, I'm gonna go back. This is sort of wine, sort of not wine. I remember coming to San Antonio when you were here, and us going to, I believe it was a Chamagaucha, maybe over there in North.
The Brazilian
and I remember us walking in, and I believe Keith was with us, if I remember correctly. And I remember walking in and there being no seats.
None.
And then
0.
As soon as someone from Chamagaucha saw you, they were like, hey, and they started moving tables and like asking people that were actively eating food to be like, can you stand up real quick? We just got to make some space here, and like put a table for the 3 of us to sit at and eat. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And you're like, oh yeah, we come in here all the time, we talk. And it was just a Jay thing, like just something that you always do. And that's what I'm saying. I didn't know if
that was a different
happened.
Situation. That was me going to Chamagaucha way too much, apparently. meeting the general manager, just becoming friends with the general manager at that time. And so then at that point it was, hey, anytime you come in, we'll have a table for you, which was awesome. But I always took care of his staff as well. And I think that's one of the things that they appreciated.
Every single person that works there,
I do my best not to take people for granted. And so I make sure that I take care of people that are taking care of me. So the wait staff always took care of them, and I believe that's one of the reasons why the GM was
so accommodating.
Pretty excited.
It was obvious. Yeah, like that. I never. That wasn't the thing, but I guess the situation was you actually knew this person found out.
Yep. Okay. I met this guy. It was at an event, and we were just we were hanging out. We were talking, and we became friends.
Can I ask what kind of event that you went to?
It was a military event. It was a military event.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, there's not many.
I was about to say. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, it was a military event, and he just happened to be there. He supported the military, and we just got to talking, and that was it. It was actually down in Mountain Home. And I said, we were talking, and I was like, oh yeah, I live in Boise. And he said, oh, I live in Boise too. I was like, oh, cool. Not many people come down here from Boise. And so we're like, let's get together sometime. We went to this bar that I knew the owner of that bar too. And we went there, had a few drinks, and then he was, it was one of those, what do you do? He knew that I was in the military. And he's like, oh, I own a restaurant. It's a fish place. It's actually a fishmonger. I didn't know that it was a restaurant at first, because when he was down in Mountain Home at the event, we had talked, and he said he was a fishmonger, which I was pretty excited about, because where else can you find good fish but a good fishmonger?
I'm going to be honest with you, and I have no problem telling the world. I hear that term all the time. What is a monger?
So a fishmonger would be like a fish butcher, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, so somebody who sells fish.
So which is why you may not know it was a restaurant. You knew that he was skilled with fish.
Great. Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I'm a fishmonger. I have, I sell fresh fish at this shop up in Boise. And I was like, oh, I live in Boise. He goes, oh yeah, me too. That's why my place is there. And so then we, talking a little bit about fish and stuff, again, with the culinary passion.
So you're just old and retelling the story now.
Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. So then, we went probably a couple of weeks later, we met up for a drink in Boise. We started talking a little bit more about it. And he goes, well, there's actually a restaurant attached to it. And I was like, excuse me? So then we became really good friends. But
then I doubled down.
That's when he told me he had the restaurant. And so I would go and I would cook in there for free just to do it. I found out that he went to Le Cordon Bleu for school and stuff. So he went to culinary school.
I know CIA. So I know CIA for two reasons.
Yeah. So CIA is Culinary Institute of America, and it's also in San Antonio. Le Cordon Bleu is, it's like the most
one in San Antonio. The one I actually first knew about was actually in Maryland or something, right?
I think there's one in Maryland as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one when I was at Fort Meade is one the first time you mentioned that. But go on.
This does still kind of tie back into wine. He went to Le Cordon Bleu, which is like the most prestigious culinary school that you can go to, kind of thing. Giada went there, and other celebrity chefs.
Oh, see, I thought CIA was, so now I'm confused.
CIA is in America. Le Cordon Bleu is worldwide.
Oh.
The Culinary Institute of America, CIA is very prestigious, absolutely. But Le Cordon Bleu is like the pinnacle, the Oxford, the Cambridge, if you will.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
See, I learned something.
Yeah. So
that's why we're here, I guess.
Exactly. We're talking. And so that's where he went. And, I would go and I would cook for him every now and again, just for fun. And, we just have a good time. And he asked me one day, he's like, why don't you go to culinary school? And I had an opportunity to go years before. I made the decision not to, because I enjoyed cooking. And this is similar.
We've had this conversation before.
Yeah, so this is tying back to the wine thing. The reason why I didn't become the somm, because I enjoy drinking wine and spending time with friends. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy tasting food. I love like having small intimate gatherings where I'm making a meal for 5-6 people, we go sit at the table, and I love to see the reaction on people's faces as they're tasting the food. And then as we sit down to actually eat, like throughout the cooking process, I'm tasting, everybody's tasting, and people are like, oh, that's good. Oh, I like this. And I explain why I did it and how we did it. If I would have gone to culinary school at the time, it was always a dream of mine to open a restaurant. It would have then been a job.
Actually, when we were in Maryland, that was something we talked heavily about.
We had an opportunity to.
I remember us having conversations about that, finding locations, a lot of things, actually.
And that was right around the time that I had the opportunity to do culinary school. And that was why we were discussing it. We were saying, hey, listen, we find a place, we figure it out, put some money down, hold it. I'll go do the culinary school thing. I'll come back. We can actually open it. But
I actually forgot completely about that till you started talking about this. So far, I love this process, by the way. I just want to pause because I've learned a lot about you
that you already knew
that I didn't know. There were some things that I didn't know. You very in passing mentioned this restaurant before. I remember there's pieces that are recognizable to me, but in almost 30 years now, if someone were to be like, hey, tell me about his time in Idaho and what he did in the restaurants, I'd be like, yeah, he knew a guy, maybe, I think. And
he knew a guy that had a restaurant, then he would go eat there sometimes.
But see, I don't even remember those particular details, but I do remember. I remember because I visited, I think only once or twice there, maybe once.
Funny story about the once that you came to visit me. The only time you came to visit me in Boise was to help me move.
Yes.
Which every single military move I had, you helped me do.
Yep.
Except for my very first one.
Correct.
That was the only one because I did not know you at that point in time.
Yes, but that was I remember going there, and I remember you had made a few dishes while we were there, and that's when you had talked about this. You had made a couple comments. I honestly don't remember.
I didn't go into depth on it.
No, but this is the first time that I learned about your lovely wife's choices of shampoos and stuff. Because I remember in the guest bathroom there were specific shampoos and conditioners in there, and I was like, oh wow, and you're like, oh yeah, she has all this planned out. And I remember being super impressed. She wasn't your wife at the time, obviously, but
no, she was. When we moved, she was.
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been.
Yep.
Yeah,
it was a couple years.
Yeah, but this was your house hadn't been built yet.
Correct. Yeah.
And
so
then,
we,
of course, in true nature, your house is beautiful and all in peace. Everything's got a place.
It's not bad for a 1-bedroom home with a single floor.
No, it's actually a 3-story single room.
Yeah, three-story single room. Yeah, it's true open
There's
concept.
A hole in the center.
True open concept. Yeah, we have a fireman's pole. Yeah. And if you drink enough wine, it can double as anyway. So what we're talking about is the culinary school. So again, like you talked, we had looked at some places in Baltimore and some other things for a building to be able to create a restaurant. And I was going to do the culinary school thing, but I decided I didn't want to do that because I didn't want that to be my life.
I remember looking at everything. We were looking at floor plans. But it's now, I'm just now remembering. I haven't thought about this in over 20 years. But
how is that possible?
In my mind,
we're only in our early 20s.
We're early in our 20s. Yeah, I mean, we were like 5.
Yeah.
No, but I vividly now remember looking at locations, looking at floor plans. I remember it being not too far from what's it called? Not the harbor, not the bay, or maybe it is the bay, where the the aquarium is.
The aquarium, yep.
In Baltimore there, because it was in Baltimore that we were looking at stuff. Just because I happened to be at Fort Meade, you were at probably one of your checkpoints for whether or not you were going to stay in the military.
I was, yep.
And so, this became something, but I remember looking at locations. I can vividly remember building blueprints, all those things. We got pretty far into it, and it would have been then a job. And I'm assuming that's kind of where you're going. At one point in time,
exactly.
I enjoy this.
And so, and that's exactly what it was. So we were looking at all the blueprints. We were going to do that. And I remember you were going to go do, because both of us were at the point where we can both leave the military now. If we do, what do we do? And I remember you were going to go do the business route as far as restaurant management, et cetera, et cetera. I was going to go do the culinary school thing with a secondary thing in SOM and try and get my master SOM. And then we're going to open a place in Baltimore.
Yeah. And there was a third individual that, out of respect for that individual, I won't mention their name.
Yeah.
That was going to be involved as well and help us with a lot of things that they were good at, which was a lot.
And a lot of the financial stuff too.
Yeah, it's fascinating that then we were just all so explain, I guess, the thought process. Go continue down the why.
So the thought process was that becomes a job. When it becomes a job, you lose the fun, or it could lose the fun, because then it's no longer a passion anymore. And then you've got, in a restaurant, you got demanding people, people that are going, well, this isn't right. Well, I don't like, why can't you? This is the dish that I'm serving. Well, I want this changed to be, well, no, this is what I want you to experience. This is my restaurant. And I didn't want it to be one of those things where I started going, oh my God, this guy or gal or person out here is just complaining. And I didn't want to have to go through that. I enjoy the food. I enjoy the wine. I enjoy the company. So you put those 3 things together, and that's what makes the experience. That's what makes me happy. So having the restaurant, maybe one day I'll own one, but I don't want to be a chef in one. That's not something that I want to ever do.
I find it fascinating. because you know me, I love chaos. This is one reason why I like Hell's Kitchen. The one reason why I like those sorts of things where you have a challenge and you have to overcome a lot of moving parts. It's my favorite thing to do in business. It's my favorite thing to do in cyber. It's been something that I think would be fascinating to be like your Sue, or I don't know these terms. I'm not even gonna pretend to know. But the point is that the person that sort of checks things at the past and make sure the experience is happening, like that would fascinate me.
Now, would I go on a show? Absolutely. I would go on a cooking show. I would love to do something like that. Now, if it was, I go on a show and if you win it, then you get to run my restaurant. I'm like, I don't know if I want that reward. I just want to do this to do it.
That's funny. And I was going to put you in that position and say, hey, if you won, would you be the one that would be like, it's good. Let's let the other person have it. And I truly believe, so I know you're saying it, but I truly believe you would do that because you have a little, so the beard in me, I have this thing, as you know, and most people that know me know, that I call touched it, which is I go someplace, I do it, I've touched it, I don't need to do it again. Like I've touched the Eiffel Tower, I'm done. I've touched this, I'm done. And you sometimes have that where it's I've accomplished a thing or I've shown a skill somewhere and then you're okay. Like that was the satisfaction.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've been looking for. Like I think in my life, I constantly, as you know, am looking for something new to learn, something new to do. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you that question. Like, what would you want to do from this point forward? Like, would it be in a SOM or a master SOM or something, be something that would bring you joy moving forward?
I would love to do that. I'd love to go through the process of it, but at the same time, I don't want it to take away from the experience and the joy that I already have with it. And it also comes down to sometimes, and this is, I've talked to you about this before when it comes, somehow we're going to get cybersecurity into wine. I've talked to you about cybersecurity and you're like, I just know too much, and not, you're definitely not gloating. You know a ton of cybersecurity, but sometimes you're like, I know too much about cybersecurity. It's kind of lost its magic. Like some of the fun stuff is not there anymore. And that's why you're constantly researching because you're like, I'm looking for that. You're trying to get that hunger and drive.
I think that's why AI has been so satisfying to me.
Exactly. And that's why you have, AI Explored, your other podcast, so that you can explore those things and go down that path. And that's new. That's your tech, which is exciting. Not that cybersecurity is old. It is starting to become ransomware, malware, attack.
And just real quick, if I can touch on that, because I think it might overlay back to wine. What I've noticed when I was doing things with the Department of Energy, when I was doing things early in my career, it was amazing because we were touching different organizations that some of them were very advanced, some of them were not, but some of them were very advanced and it was a challenge. I remember some of the red teams that I went on with team members where we were doing, different wireless attacks, or we were doing red teams and actually going into buildings as far as physical red teams. And that stuff was exciting. Working leave behinds, doing cellular things. What I've found as of late is we've been going into an industry where their IT isn't IT, but OT, and they are back in time with their technologies, which is great because in my opinion, they need the help and they need the insight, and there needs to be some sort of bridge between the IT, OT and what can be learned, but also what doesn't need. But that also has made it a little...
I was going to say, I've noticed a shift in you because it did look as though you were kind of burning out with cybersecurity and you're just kind of getting a little, But now that we've got into the manufacturing, the automation, the robotics world that are still in their infancy, and like you said, they do need that, it seems to have sparked that passion again for you. And you seem to be back into it
for a different reason, which is why I think this will tie back, because it's no longer the technology that's interesting to me, but how to solve the problem. I've always said I missed the step with cloud. I was an advocate because of my background, because of DoD, NSA, everything. It was don't go to cloud, period, end of story. And it took Leah telling me, why keep saying no when it's obviously going that way, when you should be saying go that way, but do it this way instead. Do it in a secure way, in a way that makes sense. And so that's the spark I found. Everybody, again, that knows me knows why I left the different areas I went and why we went and did things that we did in LA, why we made the decision, because I've got sick and tired of telling people their baby was ugly. And I wanted to bring it back to your baby's ugly, but here's how we fix it and work through that with them, because I didn't want to go back a few years later and find all the same problems.
For me with wine and food, that's the reason why I don't want to go to that ultimate level, the highest level, is because I don't want to lose that passion. I want to keep that passion, that spark, there's always something more. And sure, even when you're at the top, and you're the master som, you're the 3 Michelin star chef, there's always something more. I got to keep my 3 stars. I got to do, cool. I get it. But at the same time, you're at the pinnacle. And so now you're just doing the same thing, but maybe slightly different, where for me, it's still passion. I still have this huge passion for it, and I'm still learning new things. I'm still doing things differently, completely differently, and going, oh, I didn't even know I could do that. And just coming out with different results when it comes to cooking, and just I'm able to try different wines with having no bias of it, of going, well, this year, this region was a terrible year because of, and so I'm not even going to try that wine. Well, it's actually, it is a good wine. This is one of the few that slipped through because it's from Chile, which not many people, but maybe as a som, I would know that. So I don't know, but that's, the new and emerging regions.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. And that's kind of what I was getting at. Like with the cyber, it became not about cyber, but about people. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like here, instead of making it about the wine, it becomes about the experiences. Because that's one thing I've noticed. So I've been around a lot of soms. I've been around a lot of individuals that know a lot. And this is true for every industry. Know a lot about cyber, know a lot about construction, know a lot about whatever. One thing that I love about my father is he can sit and talk about his trade, which is construction and contracting and building things, and make a story that is super interesting to listen to. You follow along and you see the vision of what his years of experience has come, even though I don't, or the person he's talking to doesn't have those years of experience. That is what you're able to do. You give an experience by saying, hey, come along on this journey. That's one of the things I love about how when you cook, we'll sit there on the island and then all your actions, you can't just do the thing, which is, I guess, kind of what I do with cyber. I can't just shut up and do it. I've got to explain everything I'm doing. And that's what you do with food. And it's always so interesting to me. Like, this is why I'm making this decision. That's what I love having Taylor there for, because then she gets to listen to what's going on in your head. And then that helps her think about how she can improve her cooking and stuff like that. And then with wines, you've introduced me to a few wines recently. And instead of just saying, go buy this wine, you say, go buy this wine and here's why, here's the foods that'll go. So it's like the stuff that a som is, except instead of telling me those details, you say, look for this feel. See how it's going to pull out. So you're telling that story as well, but you're doing it in ways that are different to some soms that I've dealt with, where they're not good at talking to people and you're very good at talking to people. And that's what makes it so interesting, that because it's not a job for you, you're willing to continue to tell that story, because we all know that when it's a job for you, you tend to lose interest.
No, I don't lose interest. I go deep into it, and I get to a point where I start to burn out, and that's the thing. And that's why I don't want to do the sink my soul into wine and food, because I will burn out. I know how I'll do it, and then it won't be fun anymore. And
so it's funny that you say burnout, because you cook. I would say out of a year, there are maybe 10 days that I could say you didn't cook dinner.
Yeah,
it may be more, and I think today was actually one of them, just because we
In all honesty, I would say probably out of a full 12 months, probably a month out of a year.
30 days.
Yeah,
which is insane, because out of a full 12 months, I can say confidently that I will make a meal from scratch, all parts, twice a year. And it's always meat based. It's going to be a steak. It's going to be lamb. It's going to be something. I know when you're doing always forget how to do those phone calls. Correct. I always forget how to do it, and I end up calling you.
Yeah.
In the end, everybody that I cook for enjoys it, and I always get why you do it, right? Like, everyone's like, oh my goodness, when you make this, and I enjoy that process, but I just can't bring myself to do it every day.
Yeah. For me, it is the process. Yeah. For me, it is the process. I love to see the joy on other people's faces. My absolute favorite thing is to bring back memories to people. And that's what food, wine, and all these things are, is, they talk about when we get into the psychology of it. Again, this is completely different episode, psychology. But when you start looking at the psychology of it, the smells and tastes, those are the things that really bring you back to a certain point in time, to be able to go, oh man, this did this. I smell,
for
whatever,
example,
I taste.
I'm drinking this Grams now, and the reason I chose it is because we had this exact bottle a few weeks ago, when right after we shared the stage with your niece, my daughter.
Yes, I know.
Right. And that was a huge moment. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So it's one of those things where this brought that back. It brought that experience back. And that's one of the things I like about it. Every time I drink, in fact, Quattro Trace, not a wine, I don't think.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But every time I smell a marshmallow or have that drink, I automatically think of you, because it was the first time I experienced it. was when you took me to like a chama gaucha or something like
The
that.
flamed quattro tres for the digestif after dinner. Yep, I remember.
Yeah, those are the words I said. By the way, you probably
Those
cut
are
it out
exactly the words
and,
you said.
and
Yes.
made it sound like you said all those words.
Well, you get to edit this episode, so we'll see.
Oh, that's right. Oh my goodness. So wait, hold on. Digestif. So I'm going to say all the words I need to say.
Go ahead, say it again. Yep.
After dinner. Damn it.
Liqueur. Go ahead.
There's going to be a lot of post work here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's yeah. So those are the things. Like I said, I enjoyed bringing those memories and stuff back, and that's what really brings me to joy. Like, especially when it does come to cooking foods. One of your favorite things is lamb, and I love to make lamb, and I know that because whenever we do, you always when you're here, you talk about your grandma, and you talk about. I remember we went to the one restaurant where they had a kibbe. It was a tomato one that we had at the restaurant, but you saw kibbe.
That's right. I remember that now.
You saw kibbe on the menu and you're like, oh my gosh.
That was in Detroit, I believe.
It was in Detroit. And so making lamb and stuff, every single time you talk about kibbe with your grandma, and that's a memory that just comes up. Those are the things that just...
I didn't realize, but you are right. And from your perspective, it's every single time. Yeah,
every single time.
I don't think about it, but you're right. That is what lamb instills in me. I remember being in the kitchen and watching my grandmother. You can
remember exactly how tall the island was. You would never reach the top of the island because it was just so tall. So you had to get a step, and but you all of those memories come flooding back, and that's the joy of food. Now, obviously, you were too young to drink wine at that point in time, especially in the United States. But if you were anywhere else in the world, most likely you'd be able to drink some wine. And so those are things that you can bring joy as well with wine or those memories. I did have a question for you that I was going to ask, and you've kind of answered it. I was going to ask, what are one of your most memorable wine experiences? I know we've had a few in the past, back in Colorado and stuff. But
I think I have multiple.
I would hope you would.
So I remember being in Austria with...
I was going to start asking about Germany and stuff a little bit later on. So yeah, please.
Yeah. So I remember the Rue de Vin. So France, which I don't remember what that is. I think it's like row of wine or Rue de Vin. What is
Rue de Vin?
It was a white wine region of France on the eastern side, if I remember correctly. But I remember going there and they had the macaroons, the warm macaroons that they would always have out. And that's something I experienced by myself a lot. I remember in Austria going to Chaucer. I don't remember the name of this. There's a hotel there that has a tort. And I actually went with a good friend of ours, Kathy, and I remember a wine that I had there, and it was just so good with that tort. I think the tort and it really played, but I couldn't tell you what it was. I know it was a red.
Well, it's probably a chocolate tort then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what they're known for.
Okay.
It's a
okay.
It's the birthplace of Mozart. But I remember being it's like the Chaucer Hotel or this. I don't remember. I'm horrible with names. Actually, let's look it up real quick. It is Sacher.
Sacher.
Sacher. It's, if you look that up, it's a tort and it's in Vienna.
Hotel Sacher. Hotel Sacher. Yeah.
So
I do remember you bringing this tort.
And I ended up getting some.
Yep.
It was absolutely amazing. But the wine I had with it, I had no clue what it was, but I know I spent way more than I should have. But it was such a great experience. I remember sitting on the back patio and looking across what might have been a river. I don't know what you would call it. Yeah, it would have to be a river. Up this hill and I don't know if it was a museum of like Mozart museum or something. It was the food, the tort, and the wine that stuck out. I also, in the same thing, and I think with the same individual and you, so Kathy, you and I, after we jumped off of the Versailles Dam in Switzerland, I remember we were leaving to head back to Stuttgart.
One of my most favorite stories, yeah.
We were heading out, and I remember seeing it was like maybe, and I'm wondering if it was, because I always tell this story, and I always say it was 90 kilometers away. So let's look at this. Versailles Dam. But I remember seeing like Milano was
we saw Milano away on the sat nav, or GPS for us Americans now. And I remember asking you, is that Milan, Italy? And we zoomed out and you're like, yes, it is. And it was, I think, only 90 kilometers or maybe 120 kilometers.
Oh my goodness. It is. Like, so I'm looking at it now on the map. So Milan, it's just right over the border there. And I remember us kind of all looking at each other. It was late and we had just jumped off. And I remember we still have this video. Maybe we post the video.
We don't have a video of it. Go ahead.
You and I jumping.
No, I deleted them all. Sorry. Continue.
You deleted all the videos? Oh no, I have the video. If you're a subscriber.
I deleted them all.
You will see this video, don't you worry.
I deleted them all off of the internets. All the internets.
And I just remembered it wasn't Kathy we were with. It was a lady I worked with there. Her name was Caroline.
Mm-hmm.
It was her that was with us. I remember I also did like the hot shot with her. I have a video of us getting shot up in the air. But
Yep.
we went down to Milan and it was all like, let's just go do it. We had wine, but everything was closed. This is one of those J moments, like the bow tie moments where like, I remember us being like, yeah, I guess that's just that. And you running into someone, asking if they speak English. And then like this lady bringing us into this restaurant that was closed, setting up a table and just cooking everything. Like so much food.
If you remember correctly, I asked if they spoke English, and the lady, she said, she's like a little bit, and I asked, is there, where is there somewhere good to eat? And she took us to that little place, knocked on the door. The owner came, opened the door. She spoke Italian to him, so we have no clue what was said, and they let us in. Yep. So we went in and we sat down.
We didn't speak a thing.
They did not speak a word of English, and I did not speak any Italian, and nobody with us did. So you or Caroline. They handed us a menu, and I couldn't read Italian either. He came over.
But we had a general idea. But at some point, it was decided,
a couple of
they
things.
realized that we're just going to bring
he
stuff.
came over, and he kept looking at us. We kept looking at him. We'd smile. He'd smile. And he's like, okay, I get it. You guys don't know what you're talking about. And just remember, he just yanked the menus out of our hands.
Yep.
And pointed at us, and we thought, oh, we're getting kicked out. He pointed at us and just said, just wait, just wait. He just kind of gave us the old hand signal, just sit there, just hold on.
Yeah, I remember and I think that was more my reaction than yours, but like, okay, we screwed up somehow.
And he went to the kitchen, and they brought out, I've never eaten so much pasta in my life. I don't know how we made it home without me falling into a coma of some type. There was so much food, so much pasta. Never in my life do I think I would ever find something like that again. It was so good. And then the amount of wine that he brought out.
Yes.
I could not partake in all of it, but I did get a chance to partake in a few glasses. You and Caroline finished off many a bottle.
Well, but that wasn't the end of the story. So we did drink some wine, and that's what I remember about it. But do you remember what happened after? Because so everything's closed at this point.
Maybe I don't.
Do you remember what they did? They walked us what ended up being across like the street or down the road to what ended up being their son's shop, which was a, what do they call it? Gelato shop.
I do remember. Yep. I do.
And I remember this being, because this was my first experience in Italy. I just remember being like, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We got into this closed place. They completely took care of us. They fed us more food than I've ever understood. And it was just delicious. And then they were like, you can't leave without having, sort of thing. Like, they're like, you've just come with us. And we're like, where are you taking us? And I just remember them opening the door, like unlocking the door, the sun coming down, because we had seen the sun.
He was leaving the restaurant as we were going in. Yeah. I forgot all about the gelato part. I forgot all about the gelato.
And then from there, and I think we were in a convertible, like a BMW convertible. Is what I remember.
For some reason, you rented a BMW. Oh, actually, I know the reason. Because most of the trip was on the Autobahn, and so you rented an M3 convertible. And we tested the speed limit of the Autobahn. And for those of you that don't know, certain parts have no speed limit. I think that's probably the only reason we were able to do Stuttgart to Switzerland, Versace, Switzerland to Milano and back all in one day. I remember it wasn't bad. Yeah, that was a surprise trip that you had for us. I came to stay at your place in Germany. We woke up on a Saturday morning, and you said, I've got a surprise. We never wake up that early, so I was really angry. And you woke me up, and you said, I got a surprise for you. I was like, what? You said, we're going to go get breakfast. I said, I'm going back to sleep. Needless to say, we got up. We went and got breakfast, which was some bread at the local bakery. We had some breads. And when I say breads, I don't mean like, I got some toast. We got,
some Wonder Bread toast or something.
Yeah, we got all the really good bakery stuff that they had at the local place. And I was trying to learn German at the time. And so I was doing my very best to ask for things, and they loved that. And so they just gave us a whole bunch of food that we didn't ask for, which was amazing as well. I don't think we paid for any food that day.
It feels like we didn't.
I don't think we did.
That's a normal occurrence.
I think we tried. And so I remember we got that. And then you said, oh, by the way, I rented a car. Let's go for a drive. I was like, where are we going? You said, I'll enter it in the GPS or the sat nav. You just follow it. I was like, okay. And we did, all the way down to the Versace Dam. And we got there, and I went, no, I'm not doing this. You guys enjoy.
Like, you almost left us. I remember like you going like, no, I will not do this.
I remember and we got there. We got there very early, and I was like, no, not doing it. Probably because I drove faster than we expected me to drive. And then, so because we were there so early, we went and got something to eat. We had a little lunch in Switzerland to talk it over and figure out if we were going to do this. Eventually, I said, fine, let's do it. And we went to the dam. And once I got to the platform, I said, no, I changed my mind. I'm not doing it.
You were not happy.
I did. I remember doing it. Sadly, I remember doing it.
My favorite moment in the video, my favorite moment in the video is you looking back and pointing to your back. And when we talked later, because he was all like, he asked me to push him.
Yeah.
And they're like, we can't do that.
Yeah, I told the guys, like, listen, I want to do this, but I can't. It's not a I don't want to can't. It's a I can't. My body will not allow me. I just need a little push. Just give me a little push and I'll be fine with it. And he was like, you have to do it on your own. I was like, son of a. So anyway, I remember we had breakfast in Germany, lunch in Switzerland, did the highest bungee jump in the world at the time, at least. And then
at the time, well,
heading back to Stuttgart.
Heading
back to Stuttgart. Went to Milan for dinner and then was back home in Stuttgart that night.
Yeah, so it was an insane day. So the Versailles Dam, this is a bungee jump for those that want to look at it. It's called the 007 jump. And the reason was it was in GoldenEye. If you look at the opener of GoldenEye, it is that jump that James Bond does minus the grappling hook that then pulls him down to the bottom. You end up coming back up to the top as you would with a normal jump bungee. And I don't remember the distance, 700 something. I don't remember, but it was absolutely
I don't remember
amazing
in
and
feet.
fun.
I remember they had some astronomical number in meters that I was like, whoa.
It was an experience, but I will never forget the fear that registered in your face.
Oh, that was one of
you doing it, but you did it. Like you had to do it. It's something that you overcame.
It was one of the.
I feel like you probably wouldn't do it again.
Coolest feelings. Looking back on it, it was one of the coolest feelings. Being able to do it didn't really happen. I wasn't able to do it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I have never been like, this doesn't make sense. I've jumped out of airplanes and I'm like, yay, this is fun. But jumping off of a dam, I think maybe because in the aircraft, you look out and you go, yeah, let's land down there. But that's so far away. No big deal. Whereas when you jump off a platform, you can see that's a rock and that's a big rock. So I don't know.
It was so beautiful.
I don't know what it is.
I remember looking out the dam, like you see the lake in the distance.
Yep.
It was amazing. I loved that experience.
Yeah, it was really cool.
But and that's wine, right? Like, so you bring up wine, and these are the things that come to my mind. Like there are tons of moments that I just remember enjoying. I remember the first time that we learned how to properly drink a wine. I can sit and talk about those moments. Like I remember all of these things, and it's those markers. Food is a marker. Alcohol sometimes is a marker. There are some bad experiences, I think, but I've never had a bad experience with wine. Can't say the same for tequila.
Yeah, but I hear you on that. Yeah,
had a bad experience with wine. It's a fascinating thing, and the one that I typically also like to do, or used to like, I guess I can't say it anymore because it's been well over a decade. I used to have, like, with whiskeys and wines, cigars, and you've never ever I think you may have had a thing or been around a thing, but it was never something that you liked. Cigars never fascinated you. Mm-mm. Scent never fascinated you. Even though there was a cigar bar that we actually promoted for. Do you remember the name of it? It began with a B, I thought.
I did. Le Bistro.
No, I would fight you on that. That's not right.
That may not be it. I don't remember. But yeah,
in Colorado,
I do remember. I love the smell of cigars, but I don't love the smell of cigar smoke. That makes sense.
Yeah. See, so to me, I've never had a problem with the cigar smoke, but cigarette smoke, I can't do.
Oh my God, that makes me nauseated.
And I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know what it is. Someone much smarter than me and probably us around cigars and leaves and tobacco leaves and all of that stuff can explain it. But I thoroughly enjoy a good cigar. Now here's the problem. This is where I'll any cred I just got by saying, oh, I love cigar and whiskey is going to go thrown out the door because I don't like necessarily finishing the cigar. I'm one that will have the cigar. I want the experience. I like the scent. I like the
Robusto room.
The heat. Robusto room. Good job. Yep. Yes. I like the heat. I like I don't know what it is. I don't have to experience the whole thing. I'm the person. I don't typically do it with food like I should, but with a cigar, when I'm done, I'm done. Like I just okay. And it's sometimes that it'd be like pouring out a good whiskey. Like take a sip of a extremely good whiskey, be like, I'm done, and just pour it out. Like I can imagine some people that are connoisseurs or aficionados of cigars would be like, what the hell are you doing? You no longer are allowed to even touch a cigar.
When it comes to cigars, I know nothing about them. I can tell you that my level goes to Cubans are supposed to be amazing. I've also heard the only reason they're supposed to be amazing is because of the ban here in the U.S. So it's the forbidden fruit, if you will. But when I was in England, a friend of mine, because they're not illegal there, he had gotten some Cubans, and he came over to the apartment, and we were sitting there drinking some whiskey, and he had the Cubans. He goes, "Hey, let's go outside and smoke these." I was like, you know what? I've never had a cigar before in my life. Why not have one of the best if I'm going to do it? We both lit up the cigars, and I immediately said, "That was plenty for me. Thank you. You can finish this if you like."
For me,
yeah, I was like, "No, I am done."
See, for me,
I don't know. Just
it's
the
like
oil,
food.
and
it's like
the
a
texture,
pairing.
and but it's
and that's what I like. So like when I drink a wine or I drink a scotch or drink a bourbon, if I do it, just had a glass of water or haven't eaten anything in a little while, and I drink that, it's going to have a different flavor. It's going to taste away, good or bad. It's going to taste away. And then if I have a cigar and whatever happens in my mouth happens in my mouth, I don't know how to explain that, or whatever happens in my nostrils happens in my nostrils, and then I take a sip of that same drink, it changes it. And that's the part I enjoy. It's the same as, I don't know if it's the same, but it feels the same as, dropping a water droplet or a few water droplets in a whiskey. Or I would imagine if you don't just open up a red and immediately drink it and you let it, is it air out? Is that the correct term?
If
I pour a red wine.
Yeah.
If I open up a bottle of red wine and immediately drink it. Like why do you do that?
To decant, well, depending on the age of the wine, you want to decant it in order to, like they say, open it up. So let it breathe. You want to get some of the oxygen into it, because oxygen is what's really going to bring out the flavors of the wine. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I always do when you have a good old wine or an expensive wine or whatever, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to decant this," I say, "Sure, pour me a glass first. I want to see what that wine tastes like right out of the bottle, and then I want to see how it changes." And that would be the equivalent of dropping the water into your whiskey. I want to taste that whiskey as it is. Oh my God, that's harsh. Let's drop a little bit of water in there. We're going to change that. And so that's going to change the molecular structure of it. And you'll get a little different flavor. Then you do a second drop. That's it. That's perfect. That's what I want. Or maybe just a single was good enough. But that's going to settle it down. It reduces the alcohol level and makes it so that it's more palatable. You get more of the flavors instead of just the alcohol, punching you in your gut.
Yeah. And see, to me, that's what happens with whiskey, especially peaty whiskey. If I have a cigar, it hits the mouth flavor and again, I don't know if it's psychological. I don't know if it actually is something happening, but I do know that it is different.
Yeah. The oils from your cigar. And so I do know enough about this. The oils from the cigar, from the tobacco, that you're going to be stuck. And that's the reason why when you wake up the next day after smoking cigars, you're like, what did I do? What's going on with this horrible taste or flavor in my mouth? At least for a lot of people. But the oils from that tobacco are going to mix with the oils in the whiskey. They give it that smoky, peaty flavor. So the peat that's in there that gives it that flavor, they're going to mix, and they're just going to accentuate, and they're going to build on each other. And so that's what that's doing, is just building. And they're just complementing and evolving. Now, if you try to drink like a Zinfandel or a white wine with a good heavy cigar, chances are you're not going to get that same exact experience. Yeah. You're probably not even going to taste the Zinfandel or the white wine, depending on what wine it is.
One of the reasons why I think reds are why I like reds so much. Because that's what you're describing is an experience. And it always boils down to that for me. It's a touched it moment. I can recall that moment, and it's different. It has meaning. The environment has meaning. So let me ask you this. I've gone to one. So I kind of lied at the exact same moment. I didn't, but it wasn't a wine tasting that I see in like entertainment, like in movies and stuff. But I did a wine tasting, and I actually have the bottles downstairs that I got from it. But we were in California on a Department of Energy trip. So we were going to go to a site in California, went to some vineyard, did, I guess, a tasting, but it was like, you kind of walked around. There was only a couple bottles out there, but I always remember seeing like in movies, there's like this huge event, and you walk around and you spit in buckets and stuff like that. It wasn't that sort of experience. Like, we didn't do any spitting, I guess. It's the best way of saying it.
We drank that
and they
wine.
Didn't expect us to. Yeah. They didn't expect us to. It didn't seem, because there was no real way of doing it. But what is that? Like, I don't think I've ever experienced like a flight. Is it called a flight? I don't even know what it's called. Whiskey's it's a flight.
Yeah, you can do a flight of wine. Yeah, I've been to a couple wineries in Napa, and we've done like maybe 3 or 4 wine tastings. So nothing like a real big wine tasting. The wine tastings, if you will, that I've done are actually wine pairings. And those are with when I go to a restaurant, and we do the menu, the chef's menu or whatever it is, where I have no say in it. It's a fixed menu, and here's the wine pairings if you want them. I'm like, yep, let's do it. And I think one of these I was with you, and this was in Chicago, and it was a 15 or 16 course meal, and we had 15 or 16 different wines. And that was a fun night, and that would be a tasting. But again, the length of the dinner, the amount of food, and then the small amount of wine in each glass is what made you able to experience that and enjoy it without falling off your seat and, just rolling around all crazy.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
What?
You fall out of your seat and roll around all crazy?
If you drink too much, you
want to experience this. I want to experience this now.
Well, I don't want to be there for that. Go grab the rest of your port.
I love it.
But yeah, so those are the memories I have for wine pairings, or wine tastings, if you will. It's not a true wine tasting where you're sitting there and you're listening to the person. You do, because they explain the wine, why it pairs with the food, what's in the wine. But a true wine tasting, you're going to sit somewhere, whole bunch of people. You're going to have 15 glasses, 20 glasses in front of you. You're trying 20, 30 different wines. Some of them you're spitting out. Again, this is going to be more of your somm experience. And someone's going to tell you, in this wine, you're going to taste, or you should see, and here's the notes, and here's what the nose is. Here's what you're going to have on your palate. Here's the front of palate, back of palate.
Do they do things like coffee beans in between to
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
coffee beans in between.
Do you just drink water in between? Like, what do you how do you?
Yep. Just typically it's like a distilled water you'll drink. And
so
then they'll have
drink.
A lot of times they'll have little foods to go with the finger foods. Like you'll have nuts and cheeses, possibly some meats that you can, that'll kind of go with it. And they'll work up, because if you do a true tasting, you're going to start at the very low end of white. So not the sweetest, but you're going to have, your low end whites where they're not super powerful when it comes to flavor. And then you're going to work your way all the way up to this super robust, I can't taste anything else after I've drank this red wine. And you're just going to go through that whole experience. Now, it could, if you're doing a white tasting, maybe it's just you're drinking just a whole bunch of different varietals of whites, but they're going to do the same thing. They'll start out with the least all the way up to the most flavorful. And then same with, when I say flavorful, really, I mean more like lingering flavor. And then they'll do the same thing, or overpowering flavor. They do the same if you do just a red tasting, you'll go the same way. And they do that. So if you went the other way and it's similar with whiskey. If I drank a super peaty, heavy whiskey, I'm not going to taste a nice, relaxed, whiskey. I'm not going to be able to get a good bourbon. I have no clue what that flavor is anymore, because all I can taste is peat and heaviness. And that's the same with the reds. All I can taste is this overwhelming fruit and maybe tobacco flavor, and I can't taste now the subtleties of the white grape that was put into this or whatever, unless it's an ice wine. And then really all I'm going to be tasting is sugar. I'm not even going to really taste the wine in that, the grapes. That's why you go from the low end up as far as flavor wise, to try to be able to experience each one at its fullest and build upon itself. The best part about this episode is I really haven't had to ask many questions. I've just opened it up and said, what do you remember? And they've gone down, all your memories, all these things have gone down and opened up all the questions that I had. Like I was going to ask, what's the most memorable wine and food pairing that you've experienced? One thing I do want to talk about, though, is pairing food with wine. But we'll get into that here in just a moment. All the questions that I had, in case we weren't able to talk, which it looks like we have been able to, you've been able to answer because of the memories. And it's easy to just get these flowing when you start talking about it. And you just go, oh, yeah, wait, I remember. And there was this one time that this happened with this wine and this, and those are the things that I really enjoy, is able to tell those stories. Going back to, we were talking about doing the wine pairing, the flight, with food. If you go to a high-end restaurant and you do the wine pairing, they're going to give you a wine that they feel pairs best with that dish, whatever it might be. A chicken, a fish, a red meat. And a lot of folks say, whenever you eat red meat, you must have red wine. Period. End of story. And it must be the bold red.
Equivalent of don't wear black and blue.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't wear white after Labor Day. Yeah. All those things. But at the end of the day, and this is my strong feeling, if you're not doing one of those, obviously you don't have much of a choice if you're doing one of those. But if you're at a restaurant and you're having a meal and you say, hey, I want to get the filet, I want it, rare as can be, and just I like the flavor of the meat. And then I don't like red wine. I want a Chardonnay. If the person in that place gives you any kind of guff or lip or looks funny at you, I would get up and walk out. It's your choice. It's your meal.
Mhm.
You enjoy that wine. You enjoy that food. You can pair whatever wine you want to with whatever food you're eating
Yeah.
because you're the one experiencing it. You're going to remember that meal with that person. You're going to remember, the waiter or the som kind of joked with me about it, but had no problem giving me the white wine with my red meat. And it paired okay. Maybe I could have had more flavors, but it paired fine. And those are the things that I think people get a little bit too. I don't know if I should say hoity-toity, but a little bit too.
They get hung up on.
Yeah, is the
Yeah.
the rules of wine. Well, there really are no rules. You find a wine that you like, you drink it. Maybe you find a $400 bottle and you're like, oh my God, I love this. Maybe you find a $10 bottle and you're like, oh my God, I love this. It doesn't matter. It's your experience. It doesn't matter how much the bottle costs. It's what you enjoy as far as flavor wise. I will tell you, typically I find around the $20 range, they're pretty good. My tastes are, usually in the 60-ish range is where I like. I found that there's a little bit more time put into those. Not true in all cases. There's some less expensive wines that I really enjoy. There's also some that, my absolute favorite bottle is Opus One, and that is not an inexpensive bottle. And speaking of this, some wines, they do increase in value. As we were talking about in the beginning of this from the auction, I bought an Opus One years ago for $200. It is now valued at over $850. And I was like, excuse me? I have the option to sell it. I don't think I will. Eventually I'll drink that because I bought it for a special occasion. I bought it on a special date. And I plan to drink it on a special date.
Yeah.
Those are the things. You plan those. You enjoy that. And it's the experience like we were talking about before. Who you're with, what you're doing at the time. You've answered a lot of those when it comes to tastings and stuff like that. And we talked a little bit about Germany and being overseas where wine is a little more prevalent. One of my favorite wines, not just the Opus, I love a Caymus. I love a good bottle of Caymus. And I think you asked me not too long ago, you said, hey, I'm making this meal. What would be a good wine to pair with it? And I said, hey, a Caymus would be great. And here's the reason why. And you're like, sure, I'll give it a shot.
Yep.
That's a Napa wine. So that's a California wine. Napa Valley is pretty renowned, pretty well known for its wine. I'm sure you know that. But
yeah,
some folks may not know that California wine and Napa wine was considered, I hate to say it, box wine, like very low end, very garbage, not good. Because the wine aficionados, it was all French and Italian and German wines. Those were the big ones. And so back in the 70s, there's this, it still goes on. There's this wine tasting. They award wines, best wine of the year and all this stuff. And back in the 70s, somebody from California, from Napa, entered their wine. I think there's even a movie on it, and I don't remember the wine itself, but they entered their wine into the contest, and it's a blind tasting for the judges. And they're the greatest, somms in the world, and they taste the wine, and it won. And they swore that it was a French wine. And it turns out it was a Napa, California wine. And since it won, that's what really put Napa on the market. And that was in Paris. That was 76. So that was many, many years ago. And that was just, I don't know. I just find those things interesting, how we talk about people get hung up on the way that wine has to be done and there's rules around it. And these are the things. And so, whoa, but it doesn't have to be that way. And Napa Valley is a great example of that. It was garbage wine. Nobody should drink that, swill. And then it ends up winning,
Swill.
this prestigious award, and people start to look at it differently and go, well, wait a second, maybe it's not that bad. It turns out that Napa's a fantastic region for growing wine, just like in Washington as well. Fantastic region, Washington, Oregon for growing wine. The varietals do well there. And so when you lose that bias and that some of those rules and staunchiness of it, then you start to be able to experience things a little bit more and enjoy those things. Those are some things that I was thinking about. And that was, like I said, we've gone over a lot of the nostalgic memories that I was going to ask you for, and some of the history things. And you were able to come up with some stuff, which was awesome. When it comes to port, do you know why it's called?
I have no clue.
You really don't know why?
So at one point in time, I feel like I do. And
okay.
I remember being in New Orleans at a restaurant where I had, for the first time, it was like, and I'm going to mess this up, but like an A5 Australian steak or something. Is A5 a thing for
A5
Wagyu?
Australian Wagyu. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was at the end of that meal, and I remember loving that meal. And it was one of my DOE trips. We were down there because of Spro. After I had a dessert and a port was brought out, and I guess the person there that knew about the wines started talking about it. I remember bits and pieces, but this is what I mean. Like, this is where if you tell it, it's a way more interesting story typically than what I find most individuals that they get paid to do it are. But yeah, I couldn't off the top of my head tell you why.
So you do know why. And this is gonna be one of those times where as soon as I say it, you can go, oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to champagne. So champagne can only be called,
it because of a region?
Exactly. It can only be called champagne because it's from a certain region. Port can only be truly called port if it's from Portugal.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, you're right. As soon as you started like leading, it was all came.
Same with Madeira. Your ruby ports are more red. Your tawny ports are going to be a little bit more of the black. And they're going to have more. And so your tawnies are going to have more of the raisin flavor, more of that sweet grapey. Whereas the ruby is going to taste a little more fruity, like a wine. So it's just, that's it. It's ruby because it's red, ruby red. So you have ruby port, you have tawny port. Okay. And so, yeah, for here, like if a champagne were made in Napa, it's technically supposed to be called California sparkling wine, even though it's made in the exact same process as champagne. Because it's not from that region, it's not supposed to have that name.
Yeah, and we do the same thing with different brandies and cognac. So cognac comes from the cognac regions of France, right? And Hennessy and all these are cognacs. Anywhere else, it's a brandy. But all of this brought. So you went on the Opus one. You went on, and it reminded me, because what I was going to ask myself is, what's my go-to wine, right? So like, if I'm out and I don't know anything on the wine, and I just want something that I know I'm going to love, for me and for Leah. So when we're out, it's, and I don't. Again, I'm going to ruin the names of this as well, but it's Bella Gloss, Clark and Telephone.
Belglass, Clark, and Telephone.
Belglass, there you go. So Belglass.
And that's going to be the red wine with that really large red wax on the top. Correct. I love that bottle. Yeah.
Correct. And it's a Pinot Noir. Is that how you say that, right?
It is a Pinot Noir, yeah.
That is my go. I love it. I was the guy, again, I was really stuck on the, red meat with red wine, fish and white. Mm-hmm. And so Cabernet Sauvignon was that was always what I drank. Cab Sav. I didn't choose any other reds because it was the deepest or whatever, even though they were deeper. I learned as I got older. And then for some reason, every time I had this wine, it was not that it was different each and every time, but I appreciated it differently. And it seemed so much more sophisticated. And then later I ended up learning that particular grape, because I didn't even know this until much later in my wine experience, that the name of the grape is the name of the wine. So you have a particular grape that becomes that, like a Pinot. Is it a Pinot grape or is it Pinot Noir grape?
I believe it's a Pinot Noir grape. I will actually look that up right now.
It is super finicky. You have to do everything right to take care of that grape to get it to where it needs to be. And I think I appreciate that also, just that idea in general. So anyway, that's my go-to wine. But it also then reminded me, as you started mentioning other things and you started talking about white, because to me, I've red. The wine that I have, and I don't even know that I've landed on a particular label or particular area, but an ice wine is the most calming wine ever. If I'm ever in a moment in my life where I'm upset or introspective, an ice wine brings back this. I don't even know why. I don't know. The first time I think I experienced it was maybe in Germany, where I had a good ice wine. I don't remember the singular first moment. I just remember that every time I have that wine, I just sit there and I'm calm. And it's the weirdest experience, but I love it.
Oh, ice wine is a very flavorful wine. I mean, it's sweet. It's desserty. It is very calming. It's relaxing. It's like having a melted popsicle kind of thing. Oh yeah. So that's
now, you may have ruined it for me for the rest of my life now, but But yeah, it is. I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think if anyone ever was all like, you seem super stressed, and I was like, hey, let's just sit down. There are a few drinks that you could say, let's just sit down and have a drink of X. And I would go, this is relaxing me. And ice wine is one of them.
What you're saying is I need to travel with ice wine in my bag all the time.
Just always. Yeah. Just,
okay. You like
you're high strung, Jeremy. Here, have some of this. Just
you like Gewürztraminer as well, though, right?
Yes, I don't, and I remember like you saying that like struck back. I remember, but I don't remember why or like where I ran into that.
I mean,
they're
similar. They're sweet. They're not your Rieslings or whatever, but they're sweet and they're.
That's right. As soon as you said Riesling, so this is the learning that I went through when I was in Germany. So when I was in Germany, there was different levels. So I started learning a lot more about whites, but they didn't stick with me for some reason. I just remember the ice wine coming out of it. So it was in that country.
Yep. It was in Germany. I remember we started out with the Rieslings, did some Gewürztraminers, and then did a couple ice wines, and you were like, yep, this is it.
Yeah. I do remember that now. Interesting.
Yeah.
What else you got? You got any more questions? We're quite a ways in.
We are not really a whole lot. I think really it's probably a good time to start wrapping up, but I did want to start thinking about maybe the future of wine. I know as the super experts in wine that we are not, this would probably be a difficult one. But I want to think about it in a generality because we talk about, and I don't want this to get into a political thing of what's going on in the world, but there's the climate is changing, whether it's done by man or not, or whatever the case is, it changes. And as we can see throughout history, climate has changed throughout history. Again, we've had ice ages before we were here, all those things. What are those changes going to bring in the wine industry? Like you have to have certain earth or terroirs or whatever it is, certain ground in order to grow certain grapes. You have to have the right weather, the right amount of moisture, the right amount of dry days, the right amount of sun. You have to have all these perfect things to get this certain type of grape to grow perfectly. And it seems like a lot of that's shifting now in the sense that you've got, of all places, one of the emerging places for wine is England. Like, who would have thought that tiny little island would be able to grow some good grapes for wine, right? Besides in the medieval days when it was just, again, to survive. I mean, there's because of their region, they're cooler temperatures, but they're starting to warm up a little bit. They're able to get these good whites, good sparklings. And so I know that you're into things that are going on in the future. I know you're always looking ahead. So what do you think may be changing it? It could also be, I think this falls into your category of technology a little bit more with what types of technologies you think are going to come out that are going to be able to help the wines that are in regions that are changing, that are going through droughts. Like California is going through droughts like constantly. What could change those grapes? What could harvest better? What do you see in the tech industry and tech world?
Well, you asked like 72 questions in a row right there. But in reality, so a couple things that you sparked when you were talking about it. For example, if I gave you the argument, and let's say there were no more bottles ever from the 1920s in the world, and someone said, well, in 1920, the wines were the best. Who cares at that point, right? Like if in the 2020s, what we have or what's in the recent past is going to be what people can experience. I think your outlook, if people took your outlook of go against the norms and just experience it the way you want to experience, I think that's a good lesson in a lot of things. Experience life the way you want to experience it, not the way we're told we should experience it. And if you enjoy it, then it's a good wine or it's a good experience. So in the future, we may not be able to make what we as drinkers now would be considered a great wine. But the eventuality is that that's going to be the norm, and it's going to have a scale that it's of what's good and bad in that time frame. Same thing with the way we process things. But I remember there being a huge thing around wine about how wine was processed. So like when I go out and pull the grapes, or when I go out and stomp on the grapes, as opposed to mechanical processing of those things, that it was looked down upon if you took the human element out of it. But I would argue now that there's probably like I remember watching a documentary about how they prepare barrels. That's not wine though. Is that wine? Do you do barrels of wine? I don't even know now that I think about it.
They age wine in barrels.
Yeah. So like,
because again, remember that barrel when you're drinking some white wines and stuff, you'll get that oaky flavor because it's aged in an oak barrel. And
Okay, yeah. And I think one of the things I just recently grabbed, and I haven't opened it up yet, was a Cabernet that was aged in an old bourbon barrel.
probably, yeah,
Right.
an old bourbon barrel
And
or
we
a
just, and
Pedro
I
Jimenez barrel.
remember, yeah. But anyway, so point is that we start frowning upon things that are different when change comes. And then eventually we go, why? Because this is damn good, or I'm enjoying this thing. And I love the story of the blind taste test, right? Hey, I have these biases about that region, but you put them in front of me and I drink it and I'm like, this is delicious. And then you tell me and you shatter my world by telling me it was from, what'd you call it? That's swill.
The swill from California. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it is an individual experience, and what one person thinks is an amazing experience, another person may absolutely hate. But in the end, it's almost a who cares scenario. So yeah, it may not be as good, or we may have to do it differently. But fast forward to Waterworld, and all of a sudden we're peeing into a contraption and it's turning into drinkable liquid. Thank you, Kevin Costner.
Will that be wine though?
I don't know.
Speaking of not peeing into something and turning it into a drinkable liquid.
Speaking of peeing into a contraption.
Speaking of turning things into something else, do you think the technology will ever exist, or does it already exist? And I'm going to go back for just a second before I get into that question. Right now, they're making meat that's not meat. And I'm not talking the Impossible Burgers and all that stuff.
Oh, you're not talking Impossible. Okay.
No, they're genetically, like, they're making meat. It's not coming from a
I've
cow.
seen this as well.
It's being genetically created. Like, they're creating the meat.
I remember
like
this, yeah.
3D printing actual meat. Do you think there will ever be a time where you can say, hey, there's one bottle of this 1920 Titanic wine left, or probably not 1920 because Titanic sank before that.
It's the replicator question.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think
this is the Star Trek replicator? This is
1914. I want to make sure that everybody knows. I do know when the Titanic sank. So 1914. But anyway, yeah. So will somebody be able to go, there's only one of these left. Let's make another 100 cases of it for people to actually experience it. And it will be exactly like it was back in 1914.
You know, I mean, we would have to have, like, how do you test that? Like,
I don't know.
Like, you have to know. So going back to the replicator, like, if I stand in front of a replicator and say Earl Grey hot, and I'm Picard, hot has a specific meaning to Picard, but a very different meaning to me, and a very different meaning to my wife. If you get in a shower, of one of her showers, that becomes shower lava.
Yes, my wife enjoys hers that way also.
Yeah. So if I were to, again, this is back to the $1 million bottle question. If I were to say, hey, this is, you said 1914, I believe. If this is a 1914 synthetically made wine that tastes exactly like it, you couldn't tell the difference if I put them both in front of you. How do I know what you're putting in front of me is one from 1914 and one from the replication, or just both the replicated version? I'm like, oh my God, these taste exactly alike. And of course, because they're both replicated. Like, it becomes a scenario of why even make that a selling point, or why not just say this offers us a level of sophistication to where if you let it sit on your tongue, you should experience these things. You should experience a fruity element. It should go into your nose, like whatever the cool people say when they taste wines. You should experience these things. Who cares where it came from or how it came, or if it was synthetic and or whatever, as long as it's safe, which I guess it's not. It's already alcohol, so technically it's not safe for our bodies. But the idea is that, how do you prove it? It's one of those things where I personally don't know how you would prove it. And it may be something like, oh yeah, we can do testing in this way, and we can.
Well,
let's take that. Let's go all the way back to one of the beginnings. You the bottle replicate, the person that creates the bottle. What happens if they go all in and not only recreate the aging and everything, but they find a way to age that wine to taste like it came during that sandstorm or that winter storm or that rainstorm that happened in that year, and they can replicate the flavors.
Is it
then?
I guess at that point, is it worth that price? Because it is that bottle,
right? Like, now it's art.
Yeah, but at that point, then when you're talking about replicating them, you're able to. I think that would drive the price down, because then you're going to have higher supply than you would demand. Yeah. But it's not going to have its whatever. But then you've got your synthetic versus your real. But if you can't tell the difference, I don't know. I was just thinking, like, we're like with diamonds, they talk about lab made synthetic diamonds are just as good, and you really can't tell a whole lot of difference. I think there's a lot of jewelers that get fooled by them. And so is that
And
something
this isn't like cubic zirconia, right? You're like,
No,
it is a
like
diamond.
true lab grown diamonds. Yep. Put under
Yeah, see, I
pressure
didn't
and all
know
that.
this.
Oh, and they're
I guess I do know this about not oysters. I do know this about pearls though. Like we can do man-made or whatever pearls, and
yep. And so
yeah,
and those diamonds are like a third the cost. But if we're able to get wine and you could take a sample of it and you could replicate it on the molecular atomic level, whatever it is, so it's identical to that, is that something that we should do?
I mean, if we have billions upon billions upon billions of years, we could always just put an apple in a box, and eventually it's going to be the most expensive wine ever. Plus, it'll also be an elephant. It will also be a bunch of other things.
Oh, okay. Well,
but yeah,
okay.
I mean,
that's a different episode.
If you can experience it, if you can experience it, why not? Like, I don't want to say cheapen it though. Like, it's the difference like between like you go buy shoes and they're red on the bottom. I go buy shoes and I put red Sharpie on the bottom. That's obviously different.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like, actually taking that, recreating it molecularly. So it is the same wine, but those grapes don't exist. Obviously, you'll never be able to make that wine again because it's from however long ago, but you're able to replicate it exactly. Should we do it? And then, or should we just say, you know what? That was an experience then.
Well, the ethical part, you changed my answer mid-answer. But I want to jump back. The ethical experience is, if we're doing this, have we done all the things we're supposed to do with helping the world first before we're recreating wines?
Yes. Oh, yes.
From the past.
All this stuff. AI's already taken over.
But also the should we? And that's a very good question. Just because we can, should we? And does it cheapen the individuals that experience it? Like, if we can, like, what is sacred at that point? I feel like there are enough experiences out there that I would ask, like, so what? But at the same time, I would want as many people to experience something that's amazing to them, but it also doesn't have to be that thing. This is a very good question, but I struggle to find an answer that I'm happy with. Like, I answer it and then I'm like, well, no, I don't. I can see the other side. Like, I don't feel either way. I could understand a lot of different arguments. Because if, for example, let's say I did truly care about this, and I was the individual I did spend a lot of money on wine. I paid a ridiculous amount of money for a bottle. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, some individual can have a synthetic version that tastes exactly the same. And I was the one that experienced this bottle with a few individuals. And am I so self-important that I don't want someone else to have that experience in my lifetime? You know what I mean? Like, I paid millions and they got to experience the same thing for $100. Like, would it matter? Would I be pissed? I don't know. I don't think I would, but I can understand someone that's but then
would you at that point go, cool, you had the synthetic one, but I had the real one? Like, is that the thing? Is it, well, I had the true experience, but did you really have the true experience? Maybe because it's the exact same experience as far as it's the exact same wine. Just I don't know. I don't know.
But let me argue this. So people that are much better in this. This is like, I love how asinine we sound because of the particular wines. Because I would argue that even if you synthetically made it, you didn't remake it. Because at that moment in time, let's go back to the way the person. And again, I oversimplify this. The way the person was stomping on that grape, the emotions that they felt. Maybe even the tears that they had because they were angry and they wanted to go out and that was the way they let off steam and they had tears fall into these grapes. Mm-hmm. Unless we sampled that bottle that ended up coming from that batch, we're not going to know that this individual's tears, literal tears, were in this bottle. And maybe that saltiness changed everything about that bottle. And that's one of the reasons why it was so great.
So
and
you're saying
we just say,
from the same batch, there's a bottle that got that teardrop, and that was the bottle, and that one's been drunk, it's gone. But another bottle from that batch didn't get that tear, so it's not from that quite year. The same.
In the barrel, in this, is it called a stomping barrel? I just imagine this stomping barrel. I'm thinking of like Keanu Reeves stomping and everything I know is from movies, right? I don't know what it's called, but one person's in one stomping barrel and the other person's in another stomping barrel, and it's going to be the same grape field. Is it not a field? It's a vineyard? It's a vineyard, right?
Varietal.
Wow, the things I don't know.
Yeah, the same grape varietal from the same grape region.
Yeah, and so the idea is like they're literally standing next to each other, but it can be a different. In the end, there's going to be something different about it. I would imagine. At least I think. I don't know. And none of that could matter. I think there's also going to be a number of bugs that were in there that year. Like who knows, right?
But again, you're gonna sample that because there is a bottle left. You're gonna sample that.
Yeah,
and you're going to
and
recreate that.
It,
yeah. So you're going to get that tier. You're going to get those
think
bugs.
Particulates. Well, think particulates though. Like you're not, maybe if there are we're going to really get deep here. If there are so many, like not every atom is going to be in a sample. Like you're going to take a sample. It's just that. It's not, it's a sample of the whole, not the whole.
Each bottle of wine is just a sample.
Yeah.
So really you're just taking a sample of a sample.
So think of that. That's actually a great thing. Yeah. Like here's the barrel, and each one of these bottles could taste differently for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And so just because you sampled that one, it could have been the bottle previous, the first pour or whatever the situation be. I don't know what these differences are, but I would imagine, I don't know how these things settle. I don't know how they pour. Like now I'm going to be doing so much research. The retro is going to be so interesting to me because this topic is fascinating. But there's got to be so much stuff that goes into it that we just don't even think about. We just get a bottle, we drink it, and we go, "Oh, we loved it." And then there's people that pay for a bottle and completely understand, and they can taste. Like I always remember hearing, like I can taste the pain in this grape, and maybe they can.
I don't know if anybody's ever been able to taste that.
Well, like they can taste the turmoil in the region of that year. Like, I don't know. I've heard some funny things, and they may be completely like, there may be more. Like, for example, when I look at packets on a network, I see those packets a lot differently than most people see those packets. I would imagine something like that exists when someone opens a bottle of wine and drinks it, that their palate is trained to identify a lot more. Think about it from like food standpoint. If I hand you a dish, you can deconstruct that dish in your mouth and go, oh yeah, there's this spice, this seasoning, this blank, this X, Y, Z. These, I put it in my mouth and I go, yeah, these taste good together.
Yeah, and then I can make it. And interestingly enough, we'll flip this over to food for just a moment. When you said that made me think. Do you remember the first dish that I did well?
In my mind, I want to say it was some sort of steak, only because that's what was most memorable for me. But I don't know if that was the first dish you would have done well.
It wasn't. It was fettuccine Alfredo. And when I say well, I mean,
obviously, you know what? Take it back 1,000%. You are 100% right, because I remember you sitting there, and this was the one that had the pool where we would put the scuba gear on and sit at the bottom of the pool. It was at that location. I remember you sitting there and putting like tons of different, like the heavy cream, this is what, like I said, we spent more money on cheese and wine than we probably should have. And you would just take all these different types of cheese and make this, which I'm assuming is the Alfredo sauce, right? And I just remember it being so amazing. The flavor was so good. Yeah, I do remember that. I remember you then putting the back of the spoon in, and like it was just this whole process. And me going, where the hell did you start doing this?
The reason that I came up with
that's actually Picasso. Now Picasso jumps into mind right now. That like I don't even remember why. Was that your dog's name?
My pup. Yeah. Oh
yeah. Like Picasso was there. I remember us putting the painting, the bus putting the painting underneath the island. People were like, what the hell are you doing that for? I just remember there's like red and black splatter. All the memories.
So the reason for that, because you were talking about, being able to taste different things. If you remember, you and I used to go to Olive Garden quite often, and I always got the chicken fettuccine Alfredo. That was my thing. The reason we went to Olive Garden is because that was affordable for us at the time, and it was fancy for us at the time.
It was fancy.
Yeah. So we would go there, and I remember, so I don't know if you do remember this, but I would always order that same dish, and the next day I would try to replicate the fettuccine Alfredo. I don't know if you remember, if you came over, we would always eat fettuccine Alfredo the day after we went to Olive Garden. And that was because I was doing everything I could to try to get those same flavors to replicate it. And eventually I got to the point where I did, and then eventually I improved upon it. That was,
I was about to say,
that was how I got to
remember those things, but I think what I remember the most is the improve upon. I remember because at that point I
didn't know what went in fettuccine Alfredo. I had no clue. And this was, I don't want to age us in any way, but really before people were doing serious Google searches. And so, I wasn't looking it up, and I wanted to figure out how to make this by taste. And so it was. I would go and I would taste it. I'd come back and I'd make it, and it was not good. And then it was a little bit better.
Yeah, this is the same time frame where you got in the argument about the cutting, or like is it julienne?
Julienne, yep.
Yeah, like what that is. I remember like there's so many memories coming back with food around here. This is also the same time frame where the middle of your refrigerator was all sugar-free Red Bull.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Sugar-free Red Bull.
Middle shelf. Yep.
Yeah.
That was
I
funny.
remember that spot. But yeah, it was cheeses, and it was right around that time where Whole Foods was like a place we would go then.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why with the cheeses.
Yep. It was starting to become popular.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what went in it. And so I tried all kinds of different creamy cheeses. That's not what you put in there. And then I started figuring out what it was. And I was like, oh, it's actually cream that you put in there. And then you melt the cheese into it. That was the way I figured it out.
I remember that was always so good. I'm going to see you in a few days. I would like this dish, please.
Oh, man. All right. We'll do that. And then I'll get a good ice line
for you. That kind of takes both episodes so far, because for episode 1, we talked about you losing your fingers to cheese grating.
I'd never, not with cheese grating. It was just a mandolin.
Correct. Just a mandolin. Mandolin and butter knives are just like, keep away from those, even though you like both.
I still have phantom pain in my thumb from a mandolin, but that's fine. Yeah.
Man.
But anyway.
But yeah.
We've definitely digressed off of the wine, but I think we had some great conversations about wine.
Well, I was just about to say, I think a good wine in the next couple of days, and I think Alfredo, and then I think right after that, I think that's when we do the retro.
Sounds good. And you know what we're going to do?
For this episode?
We're going to drink a Cab Sav with that
we're throwing
Alfredo.
it all out.
We're doing a Cab Sav.
White sauce with a red.
I can't, I'm having trouble even saying it, but yes, a Cab Sav with the Alfredo, just because.
I don't hate it. And I will enjoy every part of it.
Yeah.
And actually, now that I say it out loud, I also, the thing that you do with bread, the salt, and like you have like the, it's not like it's magic, but the ingredients that you end up finding in for the bread and stuff. And then like the dipping, like the oils and the other thing you put, that's what I want. Right. I want that. I'll
go down. I'll make some oil right now so that it's got time to get the flavors in it.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I would like to ask then at the very end here, do you have any final words of advice for our listener that is out there?
Advice. I will say this. If I wanted to, I'm going to do a mini retro, and it's going to be the thing that has stuck in my mind of something that you said that I think is an important philosophy in life. And that is experience things the way you want to experience. One of my favorite things that you say, and you say this to your wife, you say this to my daughter, both your wife and my daughter enjoy eating their food, and they enjoy experiencing their food. And one of the things that I love that you say
of their food,
all of their food. I still remember the moment that a waiter took one of Taylor's dishes away, and she legitimately was brought to tears because she wasn't done. She wanted that full experience. But I remember, you saying, experience this the way you want to experience. Yes, there are ways that you should do it. There's etiquette, there's whatever, but this is your experience. And it's along the same lines of the touched it concept for me, where I don't need to re-see things that I've seen because of the way my mind works and the way I recall things. And so the idea of just experience wine, experience food, experience things the way you want to experience it. And then if it becomes an interest to you and you want to experience it the way other people experience it, maybe that's what you do. You go and you say, hey, how do other people experience this wine? And expand your own experience with that. But I love how you say that. And you've been saying it for not our entire relationship, but you've been saying it for the last decade or so, where it's been real big to you that people should just don't worry about what other people think. Experience it the way you want to experience it. And wine, food, everything that you do in life, I think that's something that someone can learn from. So that to me is not necessarily what you asked, but it's what chimed through my head.
That's exactly what I asked. Any final words of advice when it comes to wine or life? And that's it. Experience it the way you want to experience it. And we'll get into it probably in the food episode, but yeah, I'll leave it for the food episode. That's definitely a good story for that.
So now I know. My guess. Every time you ask me now, what episode is going to be? We may never get to it now because you don't want me to. So eventually, I just have to
doing the food episode, or are you? We don't know who's going to do the food episode. You may try to take that from me. You might try to take it from me.
That is the Beard way.
You know,
I'm just saying.
We'll see.
That's a good chess
There will be a food episode. I'm very sure. when.
Because I'll be honest with you, this entire episode, I have felt completely out of my element. Like I've enjoyed these things and I've experienced them as an enthusiast. I didn't realize how little I knew as far as the technicalities around wine.
Yeah, and I would say that's one of the things.
And that's the funny part is I appreciate you not going too deep into it too, because I do know that you know the technicalities.
I could have. I definitely could have gone super deep, but I didn't want to. I was like, we're gonna take this a little easier. I had some things up here I was gonna go into terroirs and all kind, and I was like, nope, I'm not gonna get that deep. I don't want to do it. I want to talk more about the experience of it.
Is that what that was?
Yes. Yep. So that was where we were with it, and I just wanted to enjoy it. That's one of the things that I think is fun about these things is you're experienced, you enjoy it, you're an enthusiast. I would consider myself more of a connoisseur, definitely not an expert in any manner.
I was going to say that exact word too. So yeah.
And so that would be, there's the different levels. So we can learn from each other on things. Again, like the brandy cognac. I think I might have known that, but I had no clue what you were talking about. It's like,
you know it. And I know you know it because I learned it with you. It's just something that you may not have stuck with your mind. Because I remember. I do remember this. That. You brought the brandy and the cognac from the airport when in
England. And that's when we talked about it. I remember it
100%
specifically.
And this is when we started learning about VSOP and we learned a lot about that.
I do remember exactly when we learned it.
And I don't remember we had the bottles and we also talked the ones that were like the blown glass and there was earth, wind, fire, water. I don't remember what alcohol that is now. Is that a cognac?
I think that is a cognac and I don't remember what those are. And those, like just the bottles themselves, themselves
just beautiful.
They're beautiful and they sell for insane amounts of money empty.
Yeah. I remember the idea was that if you were the last one to drink from it at certain places, you got the bottle, that sort of thing. But I don't remember if that's, and then that one always fascinated me. I loved that one because, and again, I don't know if it's that because I don't remember. This is going to be for the retro, but one of the things I love about cognac is the glass that it's in and the idea that you hold it and this may be myth. Again, I'm not a specialist in this, but I love the concept that you hold it and then your hand lightly heats it and changes the flavors, the aromas.
So it is a cognac. It's the Hardy Cognac Perfection. And it was fire, air, water, earth, and light. So there were 5 bottles in it. If you want to, you can buy the collection right now for €35,000.
Oh, yeah. Because we can.
I can justify anything.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Absolutely not. All right. Well, I think that would be, I think we've done quite enough here. We talked about wine long enough, talked about some of the memories. I think the best part of this is the stories and the memories and walking down some of the trips we've taken and things we've been able to do. And, I appreciate your final words since they're my words. So that makes it more special to me. So thank you.
I'm back to hating you again.
Yes, that was my goal. I was like, man, he started to like me. This is uncomfortable. All right.
Oh, man.
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. This is very fun. Very much fun.
Is that
I
hope
you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
No, I did learn. I learned a lot. I'll be honest with you. There weren't as many embarrassing stories. So as I'm editing this, I may not laugh a lot, but the retro I'm going to be interested in because I'm going to do some research. I like this.
That was going to be fun. All right. Well, on that note, I guess you hit that record button and I'll hit my stop record button also. Yeah, sound good?
And bye.
As we wrap up today's journey into the rich history and cherished memories of wine, we want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us in this flavorful expedition. Here at the Beard and the Bowtie, we explore rich topics that entertain, enlighten, and inspire. Remember, every bottle of wine has a story to tell.
And if you enjoyed today's episode about the wonders of wine and want to keep up with all our future adventures, make sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast. Don't just listen, join the conversation. Follow us on social media by searching for @BeardBowtieShow and visit our website at the URL beardbowtie.show for even more content.
Share your own wine stories, ask questions, or suggest topics you want to hear us cover in future episodes. Drop us a line through our social media or directly on our website. We read every message, and your input helps us make this podcast even better.
Looking for more? Our subscribers get exclusive access to behind-the-scenes content, early episode releases, and special bonus material that's not available anywhere else. So don't miss out. Join our community today.
And remember, from ancient vineyards to modern wineries, every episode is a journey from grape to glass with plenty of stories in between. So keep tuning in to stay informed, entertained, maybe even a little enlightened.
Until next time, keep your glasses full and your curiosity overflowing. I'm Jeremy, the Beard, here with Jay, the Bowtie, saying goodbye for now. Remember, every beard perspective adds the finishing strokes to our tales here at the Beard and the Bowtie.
You mean every bowtie perspective ties it all together?
Mm-mm. If anything, it's every beard perspective combs through the details.
Team Bowtie.
All right, you know what? I'm done. Team Beard.